What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our March Madness team rankings, all 68 teams down to one. As always, I have Ty joining me in a college basketball world with 68 teams left. We're going to rank them all and see how they stack up compared to all the teams that made the tournament. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below to be entered into our giveaway at 500 subscribers. And don't forget to join our March Madness pool that we will be putting out for free, and you can join that. And if you can beat Ty and I and even come in first place, we will be giving away a prize. So all you have to do to enter is click that link below to be entered into that. So we'll jump in here with 61 through 68. I would say the team that could make the most noise out of this team would maybe be Princeton, just because Ivy Leagues always play tough in the tournament. And, it is a tough matchup for them. But then again, a few years ago when LSU was playing Yale, they really took them to the buzzer when LSU had a really good team with Ben Simmons. So you really don't know, and it's March, so why not? But Ty, what do you think?
I think Montana State has a chance to upset Kansas State in the first round. Princeton might be a little better than them, but Princeton's got to play Arizona, which is going to be tough. Kansas State's obviously had a crazy year for them compared to their expectations, but sometimes teams that do that lose early in the tournament because it's just they've already accomplished so much. So I would not be crazy surprised if Montana State pulled that upset in the first round.
And then moving to 60 through 53, this is where you can start to see those upsets teams possibly forming. For me, I think a team to watch out are the Catamounts of Vermont playing Marquette. They have experience. They earn their second bid in a row after winning their tournament yet again. But Marquette is a good team that could give a run for their money. But if you're looking for next year's or last year's St. Peter's team, I think it is that Vermont or Montana State or even UNC Asheville team that I think could go unnoticed. And they're playing UCLA, who is banged up right now. So if you're looking for 15 seed to pick, I would probably say UNC Asheville would probably be your best bet.
Yeah, I'm looking at Furman out of this group. I think Furman has a very good chance to upset Virginia. I would not be surprised at all if they did. Virginia obviously struggled down the stretch, just lost to Duke in the ACC championship. And Furman's in the Southern Conference, which has been a very underrated conference over the years. It's one of the best mid-major conferences. It's almost always a one bid league, but there's always a couple teams in the mix for an at-large bid. So, and Furman won the conference. So obviously that means they're a pretty solid mid-major team, and they could not only beat Virginia, but they could win two games, and I wouldn't be too surprised if that happened.
Moving to 52 through 45. And now this is where you can kind of get some of those upset teams with Kent State playing Indiana. That's a trendy upset pick right now. You got your first four teams. You got three of them, or yeah, you got three of them here in Mississippi State, Nevada, and Arizona State. And then I like the Ionia Gales. A lot of people don't really see that right now. They are playing UConn, and that's been a trendy pick to make a Final Four run. But we know what Rick Pitino can do in the tournament, and it could be his last game at Ionia, which more than likely is so. And then he'll be going to the Big East more than likely. But why not give him a little taste of what they're going to see next year with a knockout victory in the tournament? But then you got to talk about NC State as an 11 seed. I think they should have been a little higher, possibly even a 9 seed. I think the highest I would go for them. So you got to give them credit, and they've had a good year in the ACC.
Yeah, I'm looking at Kent State out of the MAC. Obviously, I'm a Western Michigan Bronco, so I got to rep my conference. And the MAC has been pretty solid over the last few years, and especially this year. Kent State and Toledo were kind of battling it out, but I think Kent State could really give Indiana a run. You never know what you're going to get out of this Indiana team. They've been very up and down the last month of the season. So I think Kent State could definitely give them a run. They shoot the ball very well. So that's going to be an interesting game to watch, I think.
And moving into more of the well-known teams this year, 44 through 37, Pitt, USC, West Virginia, Boise State, VCU, Iowa, Missouri. I think you could all throw in the same category. And the one outlier there you have is Providence. And this team kind of struggled at the end of February, beginning of March, and that's why they're down here. But that could be a team as an 11 seed that could upset Kentucky and possibly make a run. I was watching ESPN Bracketology. They're saying that the winner of that game could potentially make an Elite Eight appearance. just because of what we've seen from these teams when they play at their best. And I think that will be one of the better 6-11 matchups. And you can't count out the Boise State Broncos, a team from the Mountain West, which I'm very high of this year, that could make a run.
Yeah, I think Missouri also has a chance to make a run. They look pretty good in the SEC tournament and played really well down the stretch of the season. I would say Iowa, but it seems like they can just never get out of the first round, let alone win a couple games. So not too high on them, but I'm looking at VCU. I think it's a 12 over 5 lock. I mean, you see at least one 12 seed win pretty much every year. And St. Mary's got absolutely destroyed by Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference Championship. So I think VCU's my lock to beat a 5 seed, and I would not be surprised if they could beat UConn in the second round as well, because they're playing really well right now.
And then moving from 36 to 29, and you're talking about 12 seeds. We got some more of them here with Charleston and Oral Roberts. And those are, I would say, the more trendy 12-5 picks. Charleston especially. And, Oral Roberts is playing Duke, which is a very bad matchup for the Oral Robert faithful that were thinking they were going to easily go through any 5 seed, but they got a tough seed at Duke. And Charleston, I think they can upset San Diego State. And I'll say it right now, I'm picking them for the upset. There's my 12-5 lock. That team is 31-3 and still doesn't get enough credit for what they've done. 3 of their losses have been to teams that all made the tournament, I believe. Besides, 2 of their 3 losses. And they're a solid team, a good mid-major this year. And you see one every year that makes a decent run. And I think Charleston's your team. 4 Big Ten teams on this list that could all be really interchangeable. And Northwestern, has had a great year, but can they keep the great year going in the tournament?
Yeah, I'm looking at Arkansas and Illinois out of these teams. Obviously, they're playing each other in the first round. I think that is by far the best matchup in the first round because both of those teams have talent that is way above where they're seated at an 8-9 matchup. Arkansas was top 10 in the country at one point early in the season. Illinois, I think, was at least close, if not in there as well. So both of those teams have the capability to make a deep run and maybe upset Kansas in the second round. So that'll be a very good first round game.
And we get 28 through 21. And here we go with Michigan State coming in at 28. It seems like when they are below a 5 seed, that team is dangerous in recent years. This year coming in as a 7 seed playing USC. And potentially, if they win that game, they could possibly beat Marquette and go to a Sweet 16 bid. But then you also look at a team like FAU, who is a 9 seed playing the Memphis Tigers, who you saw on the last page, and they will have to play Purdue, which would be a tough matchup. But once again, I think they were 31-3 as well, and it's still tough to win 30 games, let alone before March Madness. So that's something to look out for. And then I know you're going to talk about TCU, about how they're finally getting healthy at the right time, and even with Creighton too.
See, TCU and Creighton are kind of in the same boat for me. I've been very high on them for like the last month because they've both gotten healthy, and I thought they were both going to turn a corner, but it just hasn't quite happened with them. So I'm still high on them. I think they're better than where they're seated, but not quite to where I was. But I think what you got to look at out of this group is the potential Kentucky-Michigan State rematch in the Sweet 16. It just seems like things are lining up for that to happen because let's be honest, Marquette and Kansas State, that's not the strongest 2 and 3 seed for both of these teams to have to go through to play each other. So it'll be interesting to see if that does happen. Obviously, that would draw a lot of eyeballs to TVs if they end up matching up. And I think that would be very interesting because they could both make a run.
And then starting off the top 20 to 13, and this is where things get interesting, is you're looking at your more than likely, not long shot, but middle title contenders that could make a surprise run at it. And you got to start with Indiana at 20. This is a team that could get bounced in the first round or make a Final Four if they have any other production besides Trace Jackson Davis. Jalen Hood, Schifano, if he can play like, he's projected to be a first round pick, like he can, and that Indiana team is scary to play. But if that doesn't happen, then, they could get bounced by Kent State in the first round. And then I also got to look at Texas A&M. And yes, you're seeing a 7 seed as the 13th best team. I think they got that one wrong. Criminally underrated and definitely underseeded. Texas A&M did lose to Alabama in the SEC championship by a lot, but at the same time, who hasn't lost to Alabama by a lot this year? Alabama has been clear cut a top three team the whole year, and Texas A&M came in second in that loaded SEC this year, and that speaks volumes. And I think that's why they're going to be one of the most battle tested lower seeds.
Yeah, I agree. Indiana is probably the team with the most potential in this group. Normally it would be Tennessee, but obviously that injury to Ziegler is huge for them. I think Indiana and Miami are the two teams out of these eight that have a chance to make a really deep run, like possibly Final Four deep. Virginia, I know they have the experience, but they have been very lackluster the last month of the season. Xavier's injured. San Diego State is in a conference that went 0-4 in the tournament last year. So it's hard to see a lot of these teams making a deep run, but I think the experience for Miami from being in the Elite Eight last year, and then Indiana's the most talented of these eight teams. So I think those have the most potential.
And then as you see some of our top 10 get revealed and even one of our top five, this is where you really get down to those title contenders. And yes, you're seeing Duke and UConn, 4 and 5 seeds making it this high. Duke has got hot at the right time. Everything's aligning for them. And, they did have a few bad games and bad moments early in January and even late December. But now, since February, this team has just been on a mission, and perfect timing because it just seems like Duke does it every year. And they've been a trendy, non 1, 2, or 3 seed to win it all pick because they are a 5 seed. But something being leery of is a 5 seed has never won March Madness tournament before. So if you're betting on the numbers, Duke doesn't look like they're going to be the team that's going to do it. But then again, it's March and you never know. And then I'm going to talk about Marquette with Shaka Smart and his company. Big East, title champions in the regular season and tournament champions. And they just keep proving people wrong that they are a very good team, led by a lot of freshmen, a very young team. And it's how Shaka Smart lights it. They can play great defense and they can shoot really well and have a facilitator at the point guard. And, you've said it for the last 2-3 months at this point. You need guards to win games. And I think Marquette is one of the most equipped teams to do so. I will say that they are up there in one of my brackets to possibly win it all.
Yeah, I agree. I think Marquette's very intriguing. I'm pretty high on Texas, actually. I've been down on them. Seems like for 3 months after the Chris Beard thing, I just really thought they would kind of fizzle out. But after dominating Kansas there in the Big 12 championship, I think they are playing very hard for the interim coach. I think he should get a full-time job after this year for sure. But I'm looking at Texas as a team that could potentially win the whole thing. I think all eight of these teams have a chance to cut down the nets in April, but I think Texas has probably the best chance of these teams. I didn't think I would say that a while ago. I probably would say UCLA, but they've been dealt the injury bug a little bit, so I think that hurts them. But I think you also got to look at Purdue just because of Zach Edey, obviously. He can go for 35 and 15 on any night. So I think Purdue and Texas have the best chance probably out of these teams.
And then our top four with Houston, Arizona, Kansas, and Bama on top. And, I think Houston would be a strong case for number one if Sasser is not hurt, but, he is hurt and no one really knows the status of what he is going to do for Thursday's game. It is, 1 versus 16. So if they really don't feel confident in it and want to have him for that Saturday game, that could be also in play. But there's big question marks around them, red flags for sure. Then Arizona, Kansas, and Bama have just been super consistent this year, getting wins. And I think, Arizona should have probably was the number 1, 2 seed that could have been the number 1 seed over, one of the 4 that were. And Tubelis and Omar Ballo, those 2 guys are going to be carrying the team. And, it's the Pac-12. No one really talks about the Pac-12 because they're up late at night. And, you see it. Arizona, they're due for a tournament run as well. And then you got the repeat champions at 2, who, it's been a while. I can't remember the last time since someone's repeat as a champion. And, technically, I think it's been the Sweet 16 or round of 32 the last few times the tournament champions have been knocked out. So that's an interesting story too. And then obviously we got to talk about Bama at 1 with Brandon Miller. and his company, what they've been through, handled adversity, the whole team, and especially him. They just seem to battle through it. And I mean, I guess you could say they are the most battle-tested team playing in the SEC, played Gonzaga, played a lot of good out-of-conference opponents, and they still got the job done, earning them that #1 ranking.
Yeah, I think this being a crazy year, like where so many teams could win it, I think you could make a strong case for all 4 of these teams to get knocked out early and go in the opposite direction. I think that's what makes this interesting. Alabama didn't play great right after the Brandon Miller situation. Obviously, they dominated their way through the SEC tournament, so they figured it out now. But what if they slip up? What if they have an off night? They could definitely lose to somebody. Kansas just got smoked by Texas. Arizona has had some games where they completely laid an egg. And then Houston, obviously, they just lost to Memphis and also potentially lost their best player in Marcus Sasser. So if I have to pick one of these 4 teams, I'm probably going to lean towards Kansas very slightly just because they won the whole thing last year. Jalen Wilson is back, and he's one of the best players in the country. And they have Bill Self coaching, and he's the only coach of these 4 that is a national champion, and he's done it twice. So I lean towards Kansas, but they're all very close this year.
And then make sure you guys come back Saturday where we will re-rank the teams that moved on after the first round. Ty may or may not be joining us in that one, just because he's got a long week ahead of him. But he will have his input, as always, into our rankings, and we'll rank them based off of that. But don't forget to join our tournament below and hit that subscribe button. But until our next March Madness video, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.